From the golden age of arcade fighters to today's global competitive scene, only a few have witnessed it all. Yasuyuki Oda, a veteran behind iconic SNK titles, will be sharing his industry insights in this exclusive one-on-one interview at PGDX 2024. So let's talk about it. Oda-san joined SNK as far back as 1993. So we asked him how different the fighting game industry today compares to back then. He mentions how he noticed a drop in players between the year 2000 and 2010, but it was revived with the arrival of Street Fighter 4 and the increase of online matchmaking, which caused the fighting game community to get much larger. He also emphasizes the nature of today's fighting game community, where it feels like it's more global than it was before. Each region has their own community and they're all tied together in this global landscape. For Southeast Asia fans, Oda-san also mentions how the Southeast Asia game industry is growing and has a lot of potential. So because of that, they will be paying attention to it, which is great news for us. This is likely due to the simple nature of fighting games, where at its core, the person getting beaten up is basically the loser. In another question, where we asked about his thoughts on the potential growth of fighting games, he mentions how fighting games are a genre that you can just look at and immediately understand. He hopes that everyone will try a fighting game at least once in their lives. With so many different characters available, he believes anyone can connect and find the character they like to play. So, in order to keep this up, they will focus on having characters that people are interested in. As for developing these games though, we noticed how many games that are launching on day one would often go multi-platform. So we asked Oda-san about multi-platform games, seeing how he has worked as a director, producer, planner, and designer before. He says he has two different perspectives on this matter. From a producer standpoint, he views crossplay technology as a valuable tool that should be used to make the game accessible on as many platforms as possible, which in turn will reach a wider audience. From a developer's perspective though, he is aware of the challenges when developing for cross-platform. So if anything, I think we can all appreciate the efforts of making the game available on as many platforms as possible. Now, Oda-san wasn't always in SNK though, like he actually left and then rejoined a few years later. So, since he's working in two different eras of the company, we asked about the differences in both of his times working in SNK. He reflected on the changes within SNK ever since he returned, where back then, everyone was very young in their 20s and they could work all the time. Then, when he rejoined a few years later, a lot of those people were suddenly in their 40s, so the vibe is quite different now. In the same time he returned, SNK was going through a shift in development focus. With the development of King of Fighters 14, there was an initiative to build console development capabilities, which is something SNK lacked when Oda-san first joined in 1993. What was lacking in that era as well was technology. Now, he mentions there are a lot more people and the specs of technology have started increasing as well, which drastically changed SNK's path towards the modern gaming landscape. Despite the lack of technology back then, many fans deeply appreciate the art and sprite work of classic SNK titles, which still hold up to today's standards. So we asked him to explain how SNK was able to nail this iconic look of their games. According to him, all the classic titles were made on the Neo Geo, which is basically a console and an arcade machine. So the team basically became masters at their craft, where they knew the insides and outs of the technology they were using. With so many games under his name, we were curious to know which of these titles stood out and left the strongest impression on him as a creator. Oda-san explained that he worked on Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting when he first joined, which understandably are very memorable for him. But of all the titles he's worked on, he would pick Garo, Mark of the Wolves, which was the last Fatal Fury title in 1999. His favorite might change though, especially when the new Fatal Fury title, City of the Wolf, releases very soon. Oh yeah, speaking of which, there's a new Fatal Fury title coming soon, called City of the Wolves. Fans have almost waited for more than 2 decades for Fatal Fury's return. Now, Oda-san had always wanted to develop Fatal Fury much earlier, but the team was just too small. So because of that, they focused on creating Samurai Showdown and King of Fighters first. And with the success of these two games, the team is much larger now, possessing much better technology, which finally puts them in a good position to develop a new Fatal Fury, hence City of the Wolves. Oda-san expressed his enthusiasm for this project, where he basically thinks it's a miracle that they were able to make a new Fatal Fury properly. So Fatal Fury fans, you should stay tuned, because they will be making some really big surprising announcements until the game launches in early 2025. With so many fighting game IPs developed by SNK, we were curious to know how they were able to maintain distinct identities between multiple fighting game franchises. Oda-san acknowledged the difficulty of ensuring each fighting game has its own flavor and nuances, but sometimes it's the setting of the world that helps brings out these differences. An example would be Samurai Showdown versus Fatal Fury and King of Fighters, which are very different from each other. Between Fatal Fury and King of Fighters though, they are a little bit more similar in terms of setting, so he mentions that the idea of 1v1 in Fatal Fury and 3v3 in King of Fighters is what sets them apart. With such a challenging situation, I think we can all agree that the effort to create distinct experiences is certainly noteworthy of SNK. As a final question to Oda-san, we just gave him an open question to tell us and fans anything that he wants. In Oda-san's own words, he says, "We have Fatal Fury City of the Wolves coming up. I want everyone to play that. However, SVC Chaos recently came up, and we definitely want people to play that too. We have a lot of other titles on the horizon that we've been talking about and announcing, so we'd love for you to play all those games. Do look forward to all the great stuff that we have in the future, and look forward to more and more great stuff from SNK. So to summarize, play our games!" That marks the end of our exclusive interview with Yasuyuki Oda from SNK. We were really glad to have this insightful conversation with him about the fighting game scene and SNK's continuous effort for making better games. So what are your thoughts on this interview? Let us know down in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for any future exclusive interviews like this one. Hint hint.